Hello, I'm Bailo Jallo and you are watching Sheffield Live. And we are African Voices, a show where we tend to discuss the issues and also the achievements that affect Africans in this country and abroad. However, on today's show, it's a privilege for me to welcome one of Sheffield's councillors, who is also one of the first female African councillor to be elected here in Sheffield. That is Kaltum Osman Rivers, who is a Broomhill and Sharrowvale councillor representing the Green Party. So, Kaltum, you are welcome to the show.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, she is the first female African to be elected as a councillor in Sheffield. She came to England when she was a child as a refugee, like many of us, and today she is one of the councillors in one of the greatest cities in the country. So, Kaltum, before I begin, how you get into politics, if you just summarize for me what was childhood like from Africa to Europe.
Okay, first I'll start with how and why I got into politics. I'm coming from a research background, which I'll talk about later on. And I feel that ever since I arrived in the UK, I had representatives, advocates, people who were speaking for me, services that I needed. I always felt that maybe one day I'll have to make the difference. And I never thought I would actually join the political arena this way, but all my research and all my work has always been involved in equality research or advocacy or immigration issues as a caseworker. And I think it probably comes from years and years of working through my career. And I ended up being a councillor, and the reason I stood is to make difference, represent people, and use my experience to actually see if I could help people of Sheffield and people in my ward and in my area.
Okay, I'll come back to the childhood then later, as you started with the politics bit. Yeah. So one would wonder, many Africans, or if I can say, many black people are affiliated with the Labour Party. So how did you, or why did you choose the Green Party?
It's really important, and it should be valuable that people should know that they have choice. The choice being, if you have a party, certain party who thinks that BME, immigrants, Africans, specific groups would only vote for them, it's really wrong. That's not giving people choice. I've known my choice for a very long time. I must admit, as a young person, I did ask questions about why should I vote for you, so that might have kick-started why I should vote for someone. And it's a question that I'd like people to ask me. And the other thing is, the choice, when we say the choice, is I chose a party that I would go back to people or speak to people all the time, not the time that it's about voting times. And the choice I chose with the Green Party is really disappointed with other parties and joined and stood with the Green Party.
So will you say, from my perspective, just thinking, will you say it's because probably the Green Party is more welcoming to you, or? Absolutely.
It's a party that welcomes the voice of many people. Social injustice that's happening around the world and around our cities and the country. And I just saw myself as actually a Green Party, and I was a campaigner and supportive to the Green Party councillors in my area before this. And for the last 10 years I've been helping and supporting anyway. So it's not something that I just kind of went in. People usually just grab people and say, come and join this party and stand. But I studied, and I know, I agree with the policies and that support an aspect of the Green Party.
Okay. As I mentioned at the beginning, you are the first female African to be elected as a councillor in Sheffield. So prior to you standing for that post, were you optimistic that you were going to win?
To begin with, being the first African, I didn't even think I would be the first African if I win, or the first African female, I should say.
And if I'm not mistaken, even in your party, you are the first female African, isn't it?
To stand as a, as a councillor in Sheffield, not other cities, of course. But the other thing was, yes, you think whether you're going to win or not, and you kind of wait. It's like everything else, but believe that the fact that you've got really good campaigns and you've got good support people around you. And I've lived in the ward I stood for 14 years and had children and used the schools and services in the area and knew every road on every corner, and that helps as well. So it gives you that. It gives you that positive outlook where you kind of think, well, really, if I stood in another place, it might be the same as well. But then, if we're coming back to being the first African, it helped in a way, because people were quite supportive in making sure that I am treated equally to all like any other councillor standing, really.
So talking of the Africanism as well, where you are representing Sharrow Vale and Bromhill, it is quite an area that is quite populated with Africans as well. So I guess that helped as well.
Yes, there's three parts to the word, which is the Bromhill, and Bromhill is where there's very diverse, community. Bromhill and Sharrow Vale is also part of that. And yes, there are newly migrated communities, and also sustained communities, basically, who lived there for a very long time, from the BME community. And it's actually the Bromhill and Sharrow Vale, including Bromhill, is quite vibrant and very nice place to live as well as to stand.
Okay, so you took over the role in May this year. You were elected on the 3rd of May, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So since you took over the post, how has it been? Has it been the way you expected it?
Yes, it has been. It's been what's to be expected, really. Support people, expect that, be available. That's what I would say to any new councillor, coming on board or wanting to stand. You have to be available to the people who voted for you. And yes, it has been what I expected, and with a lot of support from the already existing Green Party councillors and supporters. So, yeah.
Well, talking of the support, I guess you are one of two councillors in the area who happens to be another African as well, Majid Majid, and who is like your co-councillor in the area. So how is working together been?
It's been great. Obviously, as soon as I came on board, Councillor Majid also became a Lord Mayor, and that takes a bit of, obviously, some of his work away from the council work. But it's really complementing. It's very good that we get really good support between the two of us, but also the Green Party active people as well, who support us, and then campaign managers who support us. It's good. It complements what we do, and also the understanding of the fact that he was a councillor I campaigned for, and then he campaigned for me. So it's really quite nice to have him chairing the meetings and me watching, and obviously working with him very closely on the ward issues. Okay.
So coming back to the area itself where you are elected, like it's mentioned, you were living there for about 14 years.
Yeah.
You know the area in and out. So what's the feedback that you get from people now, knowing that you were there as a resident?
Yeah.
Taking on councillors, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, or we want you to do this, we want you to. Now you are in their shoe.
Yeah.
So what are people saying about the work that you are doing? What's the feedback that you get? Or what are the challenges that you're facing in your role? Some
of the challenges might actually, I haven't had much challenge because of the area that I'm in. But in terms of what people are feeling is it's nice, really. It's very welcoming. I mean, during the campaign, it was really good to see posters all over the place, and people who knew me from either from my university years of working or studying with them, those who knew me from school, those who knew me from, and I'm talking about Broom Hill and Sharrow Vale as well, not just Broom Hall where I live. It was really interesting to kind of see people who said, "Oh, my 18-year-old has voted for you," or someone saying, when I'm older, I'm gonna vote. So inspiring young people as well, who I've known when they were just little, and they're reaching that age where they just think, "Wow, okay, one of our neighbours is a councillor." But also, people can come to me. That's also a good thing. I'm being stopped on the street and being asked about how I can support them, and I'm happy to give my card and call them and visit them the next day, which is quite good.
I'll come back into role model and inspiring stories in a bit. But some of the challenges in the area, which you will understand recently, there were a few issues such as knife crime in the area.
Yeah.
So as a councillor, before I go on to what the council is doing in general, you personally, so how are things like that affecting you, knowing that it is you that is the councillor in that area, and such issues are happening now, every now and then?
With the knife crime, it's an issue. It's actually a national issue, which I'm sure many councillors and MPs and those who are working with young people and families are struggling, as well as kind of basically facing challenges with. So I don't think there's any difference in our city. And Sheffield, a very friendly, very beautiful city, to actually be part of the cities that are having high knife crime, or even being mentioned, or seeing incidents, is really quite saddening. But in terms of the area where I live in, and quite recently, obviously, you've seen some issues of knife crime and other serious crimes happening. We have been allocated a safety team in January this year, which I was quite happy about. As I was coming onto the campaign, I knew that we were going to have a dedicated police team, which is good. And now the PCSOs are known to the communities. They could actually just walk into any area and everybody knows them. And we've been working very closely with them in terms of, and I don't like the word of integration in this sense, but we've been working together as community. Even the safety team are part of the community, and the businesses and local other local services have been also complying and working with us. But how it's challenging for everybody. And as a councillor who also has children in the area, it's worrying. But as long as people can come to us and say, "This is what we're worried about, this is what we're concerned about," I'm happy to talk to families who have been affected by this, visited some of them, supported some of them. And anything that's confidential obviously stays with the police and with the medical team who are dealing with knife crime. But as a councillor, you might be the first point of contact. So that is quite a challenge.
And the most worrying thing about this is, like, most of the victims and the perpetrators are all probably living in the same areas, or is all like young people, and looking at it from a different perspective, Sheffield used to be considered as one of the safest cities in the UK. But looking at it now, knife crime and other crimes are going up. Do you think this is an issue that needs to be addressed in Sheffield? Because I can remember speaking to a youth worker just a week ago who said, unless we admit there is a problem, the problem is not going to be solved. Absolutely.
I think in anything that we talk about, and if we want to bring change, we have to think about how we're going to manage that change. But if we're going to try and bring change to issues of knife crime, I remember a few years ago, there was a way to tackle guns and gangs issues, and I could say to you that failed. That didn't actually get much support that didn't help much, because now instead of guns only, we now have we always had knife crime, but we have a larger, in a larger scale. And the youth worker is right. Unless we actually challenge and admit that we have a problem, then we can't challenge that. And we're admitting in the grassroots level of community, admitting in the grassroots level of the schools. I think education needs to come to this. The schools need to educate and support young people. If you expel and exclude young people, where are they going to end up? I mean, it's basically giving them away, if you like. So schools need to be on board on this in tackling knife crime, I think.
Talking of schools or education, but all that, I guess, will need resources.
Yeah.
Be it human resources or the money. So in your opinion, what do you think needs to be done in general? I know you've mentioned about education and schools need to get involved, but how are these going to be involved, or how can people get involved? What needs to be done, or what needs to be considered as a priority?
In terms of education, I mean, this might be just my opinion as myself, but I have a background of education policy, and I did my research on education inequality, and part of it was race and inequality. And I think schools are very quick to exclude young people, especially those with challenging needs and those with additional needs. And the majority of young people who actually get excluded might come under the number of the BME community and maybe boys. There is research out there that people can actually tap into. The reason I'm mentioning schools, I would like schools to give the young people the chance and the time instead of excluding them. Because the more needs children or young people we have, and needs is not in education or employment, or excluded young people we have, the more that we're not giving them opportunities. So we're giving them away to those who could just employ them to do criminal activities. So I think we need to start, and schools need to have responsibility, especially secondary schools, when it comes to young people. That's the part of education I was talking about. In terms of community, I think everywhere in Sheffield, which is, yes, a beautiful, safe city in the country, and then the greenest of all, should really, we should all be working together in this case. All parties should be working together. And I think police, there's community and education, and all political parties should be working together, not really working against each other or just kind of talking to different organizations separately. We should really be thinking, what is the strategy and who has the remit for that and who's not doing their part.
Okay, and just a final one from that topic before we move on to the next one. The agencies that you've just mentioned, do you think they are doing enough in order to tackle these problems?
In terms of statutory agencies or just the agencies?
Well, all the agencies like the council, you as councillors, the police, social services, because there are a lot of people involved in this, and there are lots of people that needs to be involved for this problem to be tackled, including the young people, the schools, and that kind of thing. But like I mentioned earlier, all this will depend on resources. And we've seen recently, since 2010, there has been lots of cuts, which has been affecting lots of services, and some will argue that's the reason why enough is not being done yet. There is still happening, but still there is a long way to go.
Well, there is a long way to go, but I think people should be realistic about where they're spending their money. People should be realistic about what they're funding. And when I earlier on mentioned about the ending guns and gang crime, there were organizations who their remit were children and young people, yet there wasn't, and I'm talking about the specific organizations, not the statutory sector, but perhaps voluntary or projects. But where's the evaluation in where you're spending your money in? We need to know where the money's going in and who's actually your funding to do something. So that for me, I keep it in, I hold it close to my heart. That if I was to fund someone, I would actually want to see more of a concrete, tangible work that's been done. So people need to we need to tread really carefully of where we're spending funding on knife crime now, because it affects the community, the whole community. There are families whose children young people have been stabbed. If the young people are not talking to the police, it's different. That's a different scenario. But what about the siblings and the mothers and the fathers and neighbors and uncles and aunties? How does that affect them? So there are a few organizations who do a really good job. And in terms of statutory sector or agencies, again, they need to work together. They need to be more realistic. We need to be more realistic in communicating with the communities, those who are affected by this, not just sitting and having a chat about it. And policy development comes. We need to have the voice of the community in everything we do.
Okay. Well, we'll stop there for now, and we'll go for a short break. Don't go anywhere, and we'll be back soon.